So next one is from our boy Brian Dunlop,
Mm-hmm.
who
Ooh.
wants Brian Dunlop's the guy that
The
likes to give
fantasy
all his
booker.
the fantasy booker guy. He
Mm-hmm.
likes to give booking ideas, right? Subject is Dominik Mysterio as Mr. Money in the Bank 2023. Hello, Conan and Disco. Dominik Mysterio is getting nuclear heat as a heel right now. The most of the company, at least when it comes to his recent crowd responses. Water is wet, and ex-con Dom gets heat. I don't remember this level of heat on anybody since Mr. McMahon in the Attitude Era. But by the way, I'm going to direct us to a Twitter thread that you guys are going to be entertained by this, right? Dom on the May 1st, 2023 episode of Monday Night Raw was something else. Did you watch Raw last night, by the way, Conan?
Yeah.
Did you see the heat that Dom got?
Incredible.
Mm-hmm.
This has me thinking. Dominic could be a perfect as Mr. Money in the Bank. I'm not saying throw the world title on him, but if he wins the briefcase, the plan should be to see how the crowd responds to him week to week. I definitely don't think he's there yet as draw to become World Heavyweight Champion. But I think WWE should at least tease the idea and test the waters when it comes to World Champ Dom. What do y'all think? Joe included. Should Dominik Mysterio become the 2023 Mr. Money in the Bank? Imagine the heat he could draw with that briefcase, the fans knowing there's a decent possibility he'd win the top title and become the real big dog in the yard. I'm looking at you, Tribal Chief. All right. This is great, Vin. So, Russo, all right, this is like right before we came on the air, I saw this tweet, and so I responded to Vince. Bro, Vince on his show literally said, okay, let me read you an article here. This is I didn't listen to Vince's show, but this is an article from NoDQ.com that was reporting on Vince's comments on the show. As NoDQ is just the Mark website, but they're just reporting on what Vince said.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But they're reporting on things Vince said, so it's not fake news. This is a report on Vince's actual words. Right. As seen during the May 1st, 2023 edition of WWE Raw, Rey Mysterio was heavily booed anytime he tried. Oh no, the guy they already screwed up. They meant Dominik Mysterio was heavily booed anytime he tried to talk on the microphone. While appearing on SportsKeeda.com's Wrestle Bing podcast, former WWE writer Vince Russo questioned if all of the heat was legitimate. Oh, quote, "Oh, okay, all right, whatever. Bro, Chris, listen, am I crazy? They're piping in that Dominic heat, bro. Here's why I think so. I've been in front of many, many crowds in my life when people had tremendous, tremendous heat. Bro, you cannot physically keep up that level of heat for so long. I could be wrong, but I do not think it's all 100% authentic heat. Okay? So I quote, this was on Twitter, so I quote tweeted that, okay? And, let me see here. I quote tweeted that and said, "Oh my God, at the Vince Russo, what on earth, LOL." Okay? Vince responded and says, "Bro, when nobody else has any heat," and he puts in capital letters, any heat on the show, and this kid has, and he puts in capital letters, blistering heat, you have to question it. But take nothing away from young Dom. He's doing a tremendous, tremendous job. Big supporter, okay? So basically Vince is saying that they're piping in the crowd heat, okay?
Right.
So somebody responded to him and said, "To be fair, a friend of mine who hasn't watched wrestling since the mid-'90s and now has a son asked if Ray, quote, had beat that little unquote. He sees that heat with people who don't follow much anymore." Then Vince responded, "That's cool, but he doesn't have heat with me. To me, he's entertaining, as you know." I gotta try and find where I'm responding here. So I'm going to show you the two responses to me. Okay, so then Vince responds to me, okay? "Bro, when nobody else has any heat on the show and this kid has blistering heat, you have to question, but take what you care." Then I quote tweeted this. "Nothing to question. It's a great gimmick that nearly every fan can get invested in. A disrespectful punk kid whose dad is one of the most likable guys on the planet Earth. Fans can respect this act and give it the heat it deserves, which is what they're doing." Then Vince responded, said, "A disrespectful kid is a quote-unquote great gimmick? Really, Glenn? Man, bro, sounds like you're doing the limbo like a lot of the others. I don't lower bars. I raise them. You used to as well. I respond to this by says, I am right and you are wrong. Bro, okay, show me in the history of professional wrestling where there has been a disrespectful kid that's a shoot son of the father and is acted like this. It has I'm asking just generally. Like,
well,
has
they
this happened
tried
before?
David Flair and Ric Flair.
But David Flair was not even close. Like his stuff
No.
wasn't even remotely close,
Right.
right?
How about in Memphis, Brian Christopher and Jerry Lawler?
They never really
They
did
never
an angle with
feuded.
each other.
They
They
never
never
feuded
feuded.
Yeah.
Even WWE?
Nope.
Just a little bit.
All
Brian
right.
came
I'm just
back.
asking.
Yeah, Brian came back and talked to him once.
It's as easy as this, Vince. I mean, if they're piping in crowd noise, why wouldn't
Right.
booze, why wouldn't they do it with another wrestler? Why would they
Exactly.
only do it with Dominic? That's number one. Number two,
to the guy that doesn't need it. Why would they do it to the guy that doesn't need the piped in crowd noise? Right?
Number two, I was in WrestleMania.
Uh-huh.
I heard that. Number three, I was sent a tape from his match in Madison Square Garden, and that was not piped in booze either. And bro, he had the most heat out of anybody the whole night. It's like you said, it's a very easy, Vince, that is a gimmick. A disrespectful kid, because we all know a kid that's disrespectful to his parents, and you're like, damn, if I ever was his dad, I'd beat his.
The kid's going to jail. You know, he's embracing like the prison life. It's like how many fans wouldn't want to see a kid, like your kid, publicly disrespecting you, and this kid's been to jail, and it's like, you know, and like he's, you know, like how could anybody, like nobody's gonna cheer this.
Not only that, he's disrespecting his mom, screaming at her,
bro,
disrespecting his sister.
Not one fan in that arena can find a reason to cheer this guy.
Right.
Like,
and
even if you want to
heel.
Exactly. And it's like, you know, and I think the fans are giving this gimmick the respect it deserves because, like, bro, there's not a lot of trolling. Remember, like, the fans used to troll the show where they cheer the heels, boo the baby fan, like they boo John Cena, and so they're not doing that anymore. Ever since like they like wrestling did not do live crowds for like a year. When they came back, it's kind of like,
you know what I think. Think all the fans that were unhappy went to AEW, and all the fans that are happy are still there in WWE.
And then there's
they're not going to hijack the show.
They're not going to hijack the show, right? And so, and then what they're going to do is, when a character like this is on TV, they're going to boo because, bro, when people start booing, and you're at a wrestling show, it's fan involvement. You kind of start booing too. You know, it's like a boo, and like everybody's booing. It's like you're not just gonna sit there. Like you're there for crowd participation. Like, you know, so I think I'm doing a show with Vince tomorrow. I'm gonna definitely. It's gonna be fascinating conversation with him because I think he's way off on this. Vince is so anti-wrestling booking. Like, you know, like all the booking still stinks. You know, everything's that he's trapped. He's gotten caught in a bear trap here where he can't see the obvious. He's like ignoring the obvious. And like, well, my take is still right. You know, so no, you're way off on this. You know, so
let me get a little bit of water because I'm parched.
Sure, go ahead.
You know, Glenn.
Yes.
While I was getting water, I was thinking about something about Vince Russo. Tell me, because you know him better than I do. I almost get the idea when you were telling me now that he's saying, well, nothing's good and all that, when obviously the bloodline is good and the Rey Mysterio.
No, he does think so. He's reiterated so he does like some of this stuff. Oh, but he's super critical. Let
me ask you a question. Do you think that there's a part of him, since, you know, he did do some great things when WWE finally overtook WCW, and a lot of times he doesn't get respect, especially from like a lot of his peers, because he decided to become combative with them, and so guys like Meltzer and other guys like that, they never give him his due, and I kind of think he'd like to come back and kind of do something and write, and nobody's really called him, and maybe he's mad about that, do you think, or not?
I think at his age, because I talked to him, we would every other week, you know, I've done shows in the past, right? At his age, I definitely think he's not really interested in doing, like, you know, but I don't know. It's like, I think the problem is that the criticism of like he's kind of upset that there's kind of that they've kind of like created this echo chamber of like Vince Russo doesn't know what he's talking about.
And everything that he did sucked.
And everything that did sucked. And it's like you can't like look at that and like as a reasonable person say that that's absurd. Like to the point that like Alvarez and Lance Storm were literally like going back and watching, like doing watch-alongs of old Attitude Era Raws and trying to criticize them, the booking.
Right.
Which is like what are you guys doing? It's like, right. Bro, it's like I think that Vince kind of like sees like the polarization in wrestling, but he's kind of fed into it.
Right.
Because he's like assumed his sign. Like, I think the criticism of him is extremely unfair. You can criticize him in WCW, but it's like, if you look at the historical history since Vince ever I think Vince started writing in 1996, right? And nobody wants to admit Vince changed the way shows were written.
Yeah.
Vince was the guy that brought the camera into the back. Vignettes were just recorded, like the camera wasn't there. And bro, you've been in WCW. You remember before Vince came, the show was basically like there wasn't a show that was like on paper. It was just names on the board. You look at the board, Konnan versus Disco, 12 minutes. And like we go there. When Vince came in, there was a written show. He was actually writing a show and like, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, I kind of get the vision of the show. So it's like, I think that like, because Vince kind of like did the sledgehammer to the old school philosophy of booking and started like calling it writing. We're writing a show. We're writers, I'm a writer. So like this whole thing, like writer versus booker, like, stuff, and like kind of like drew the line in the sand. Like, okay, wrestling needs writers. And to the point, like today, it's like, wrestling is hiring a bunch of writers. And they're hiring writers that like from outside, like, from like TV and stuff to like write stories and stuff. And then like, I don't think Vince gets enough credit for that. That like, if wrestling storytelling, Vince is the kind of guy that they brought in is like, yeah, we need storytellers. Not bookers, not this old school, not, and like he's kind of right about that to the point that like even you today, like when you write a show, do you write it in like the Vince Russo format or do you write in the old WCW format before Vince Russo came? How do you write a show?
Yeah, in the Vince Russo format.
So it's like it's funny.
But I wasn't I wasn't really that much influenced by Vince. I was more influenced by Paul Lee.
Okay, but the actual process of writing the show and when you're writing the show, what you put on paper and what you submit, that's right. Vince. Right. And like, and I think people don't want to give him credit for that. It's like
you have to give him credit, bro.
Right,
because
he
was writing during the most successful time in the history of wrestling when there was a real wrestling war going on, where both of them had major stars and major ratings, and
he changed the way you write the show, and then they overtook like the right. Yeah, so
Vince,
that's
Vince might have edited some of his. That's what he does as an owner. Some of my gets edited by the owner of the company, right?
Right,
but
right.
I'm writing it. He was writing it with Teddy Bear Ferrara.
Right.
By the way, Teddy Bear has Sea Monkey Heat with me.
He's off Twitter. But he doesn't want. I think he's off the grid because he's not even. I saw his Twitter account has been deleted.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I tried to hit him up, and he's deleted. Maybe he might still be on Facebook, but I don't know.
Do you guys find it offensive that Ed Ferrara never came on K100, but he's actually a 2-time creative control guest back in the day? Does that really?
No, I find it offensive that you had a show and you thought it was going to do good.
Get a load of this. You know who I connected with? I sent a text to the last night. Mike Tenay.
Oh, cool.
He's been off the grid. Like we shared a text exchange. He spends his time between San Diego and southern Utah. And he comes to Vegas every once in a while. He said.
Would Mike Tenay do K100 Sports because he is a gambling?
I was going to
expert as
ask
well.
him that. I was going to. I might text him and say, "Hey, I know you don't, but bro, he's off the grid." He says he's been
Well,
off the
what
grid
if you
since
say it's no
I
wrestling?
don't
Say
think
no
he
wrestling. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just talking about hockey.
But amongst friends,
Because he's
you know,
he used
'cause
to actually
we're real good friends.
he used to actually write for the LA Kings, like their website. So yeah, interesting.
Yo, what up? This is Konnan, and I host Keeping It 100, my co-host, Disco Inferno, unfortunately.
Well, I'd say you're my co-host.
Listen, every Thursday here on Spreaker, we talk pro wrestling, sports, movies, music, TV, pop culture, and some politics. It's everything the rest of the pro wrestling podcasts are not.
Tune in to hear myself, the superior one, educate and inform.
Tune in to hear me bury Disco.
That's very disrespectful.
Join us every Thursday on Spreaker and keep it 100. Boom!